All right, so my job today is to help you to understand where we've been and where we're going. I'm really just setting the stage for some amazing talks that you're going to hear from a lot of people throughout the day. So this is why we are so proud of the myeloma community. Now, we all live and breathe in the world of myeloma, so we only know this disease as patients, okay? But to have taken a disease where the survival was 3 years when I was diagnosed, and now have the average survival, based on publications, be 7 years, is unheard of. And the truth is, as more and more patients start on the new drugs that are out there, what we're seeing, and I think Sundar and Sagar would also say this too, is that number is really anecdotally getting to 8, 9, 10 years. There are not other cancers doing this right now. You don't see results like this in other uncommon cancers. So we are, I know it's hard to get a diagnosis of myeloma, but we are hugely lucky to have an amazing community working with us every single day. So now you look at where the pipeline is. So it's one thing to really improve survival. It's another thing when you look at a pipeline. So here we are, right? We now have 5 drugs approved. You know most of them: Thalidomide, Revlimid, Velcade, Doxil, and then you heard last night about Kyprolis. And what you heard was how together our foundation and a pharmaceutical company was driving towards speed. Because we've always been focused on getting you the next drug when you need it. So speed is critical to us. And then you're also seeing that we now have 6 drugs in phase 3. And this is what you're going to hear a lot about today. You know, you all are asking about elotuzumab, pomalidomide, panobitastat. What you really want to know is a little bit what Helen was talking about last night. It's not just to know that there's a big portfolio of drugs, but we're already combining them. And we talked about this last night, that you want to combine early drugs together as fast as you can. And as a trusted third party, we do ask the pharmaceutical companies, we kind of guilt them into it to say, well, we can't wait. We can't afford to wait for you to put these drugs together. Let's do it now. Let's do it today. So that urgency is always in the back of our minds. The reason that myeloma is successful is because you have a foundation like ours who is always driving the plan. But it's also because we have amazing partners that work with us every day. We don't do this alone. We do it as a huge community. When we started, this is where we were. It was on the left side. We were always working with the academic centers and the drug companies and FDA. Because again, remember, next drug when you need it. That's where you had to focus. But in today's world, 70% of myeloma care is being handled at community centers, your local hospitals. Why? Because with Velcade, Revlimid, some of these newer drugs, you can treat patients pretty easily as a community physician. Why do we care about that? If we're doing clinical trials and we want those trials accrued quickly, because that is the longest part of drug development, you need to be at the centers that have all the patients. So that's why we're working here at community centers and why we just signed a deal with the Veterans Affairs, which is a huge, huge data source for us in myeloma. So right now, we've been working with about 150 community centers, 150. And we're collecting data on them. Who's the best center? How many patients do they see? What are their skills at those centers? So that has been huge for us. But now, look where we're going. As you heard last night, we're becoming more of a data-driven company, not just for the sake of generating data, but for the sake of looking at data and understanding how it's going to change our clinical approaches. That means we're now working with all the bioinformatic groups, and as we start to understand new targets and biomarkers, we now have to work with diagnostic companies and payers. So think about this. We are a team of 35 in the Norwalk office. We do everything from 50 events a year to genomic sequencing to clinical trials, and we're working with a community of hundreds, literally hundreds. But I think we do this really, really well, is keeping everybody on the same page and making sure we're all moving and hitting milestones. So another reason that we have been hugely successful is the collaboration that you saw on the last slide, but the innovation that you see coming from us every single day. And I like this slide, even though it's very busy, because what you see is behind the scenes are all the things that we just do. We don't, rave about these. We just come in and do them. So at any one time, we'll be looking at funding our fellows, funding our seniors, launching biotech awards, doing RFAs for new and exciting grant programs. But simultaneously, we're putting business and science together and building new models, such as our genomic initiative, such as our clinical network, and now all of our efforts in personalized medicine and launching a 1,000 patient study. So the day-to-day continues, it's complicated, but the new models also continue. The reason we care about these models is because they all add speed to the system in terms of you getting these new drugs. Now, we will tell you at any one time, we are working with at least 30 pharmaceutical companies in our office, at least 30, and talking to them extensively. But we also have to say which are the drugs that we're going to prioritize and make sure we're moving as fast as we possibly can. And that's where we're always looking at this. And you know, elotuzumab, pomalidomide, we're constantly doing these evaluations so that we know where every drug is. And that's why when we focus on next drug, we prioritize, we move quickly, we get you what you need. So when we look historically and we say, what have we done? Well, since we started in 1998, we raised $200 million. And within that $200 million, we have to thank all of you, because all of you are playing a critical role in our funding support. This is how we raised it. 40% of that money came from donors directly. 30% of that money came from our events, you know, our races, our marathons, our corporate events, black tie events. And then 28% of that money historically came from pharma, a lot of that supporting our educational programming. But what did we get in return for that? We have funded over 300 grants at all of the academic centers. We have banked 3,500 tissue samples that are desperately needed by everybody. We're the first to sequence the genome. We have spearheaded 40 trials of 20 new drugs. We've had 5 drugs FDA approved, and together with all of our partners have doubled the lifespan of our myeloma patients. Now think about this. It takes $1 billion and 10 years to get one drug to market. This is what $200 million has done for myeloma patients working with the best partners in the country. I call that a really good return on investment, and I thank each and every one of you for contributing to it. So we're not one to rest on our laurels, as everybody in our office will tell you. We say, oh, that was great, and we're so happy that we did that. It was phenomenal, but oh my gosh, what's the next problem? How are we going to get to a cure? So this is a busy slide, but it's really important that you understand this. What keeps us awake at night now is the fact that the more we know about myeloma, the more we know it is heterogeneous. So if you're looking at this slide, and this is actually a slide, I think Sundar was on this, yes, with Paul Richardson. All you need to know here is that there are a lot of mutations in myeloma. It's not just one. It's not like we can have one mutation and we find a drug that works to that mutation, and now all of a sudden our patients are doing better. We all look different, and this is why we all look different, right here. But yet, when we look at how our patients are treated, you can see that we're almost all treated the same way. And it's primarily Revlimid, Velcade, and Dex. And we say thank goodness for that, because they are amazing, amazing drugs. But we also understand that patients will relapse. Myeloma changes, patients will relapse. The disease changes, different mutations, different pathways. That's why you need a big portfolio of drugs, okay? So what we're really focused on, and I've said this, started to talk about this last night, and you'll hear about it today, is the fact that in order to understand the heterogeneity of this disease, that pie chart I just showed you is just the beginning. There's even more going on in this disease, and you'll see it over time. We all have our own data set. So the MMRF will have its data set for COMPASS, right? But all of the academic centers and even the pharma companies have their own data sets. They may be doing a certain trial with the French. They may be looking at certain trials that they did on their own drug. But right now, those data sets are kind of held within the walls of that center or that company. What makes us so unique is that everything that we are doing at the MMRF and MMRC, all the data that we are putting together for the COMPASS study, every center, and there's 50 of them, working with us on this COMPASS program has agreed to put their data into the public domain. They've all agreed to give up intellectual property. That was a full year of Walter and me going on the road and explaining to all of those centers why they needed to give up intellectual property for the benefit of our patients. That was not easy. So now we're there, and we are building a data system, and we have now seen it. The gentleman that was sitting next to me last night, John Quackenbush, is one of the people designing the full system with us. We are now putting together a system whereby not only does all of our data go into the public domain, but thousands of scientists can go on and look at it, and there's a front end that is so easy to use that you almost feel, as Louise would say, as she kept saying to me, it needs to look as easy as if you're shopping at Amazon. So you may go in and you know, I always use the Toys R Us because of my two children, but you know, you go in and you're going, okay, let me see, instead of children, you know, 13 to 15, I'm now going in and saying, okay, I want this form of myeloma. Instead of saying electronics, I say, oh, I want this mutation. It has to be that easy, that easy. And that's what we are building. And it has taken years of our time to design this system. We started working with vendors, IBM, Oracle, they were all in and out of our offices. And now we are down to 2 companies that are nimble, innovative, results-oriented, just like our culture, and we will go into beta test in November. I have to tell you, everybody said you will never do this. You will never launch a 1,000 patient study. You will never get everybody to give up intellectual property. You will never build an IT system that will be that easy to use. You know what? Don't say never to the MMRF. Just don't say it. Because when it comes to our myeloma patients and defending families like Andre's, we will do whatever it takes to do the right thing. So, people say to us, well, why do you believe you can find a cure? And I say it's because we're really smart, it's because we build great models, it's because we care desperately about drugs, but I have to say the technology is really, really helping us right now. So I look at the world of healthcare, and I always say this to everybody, you have to see what's going on in the whole world, look at the environment, and then take advantage of those technologies when you're writing your strategic plans. So first of all, genomics. I mean, it used to take years to do genomic sequencing, and it cost a fortune. In today's world, you can do it quickly, and it costs $1,000. So sequencing is becoming huge. And any of us reading the New York Times or the papers sees, oh my God, everybody's starting to do sequencing. Then you move on and you look at electronic health records. So patients like us, you know, we used to go in and there was like huge medical cabinets that housed all of our data. Not anymore. They tell us, go on, look at your portal. You've got your electronic health records, tons and tons of data. I go, hooray, I want to see all that data. I want to share that data. And with electronic health records, it's digitized. Over time, we're going to be sharing our data. And then the third area is with social networking. When I was diagnosed, I felt so lonely, like, does anybody else have this disease? Now you just go onto Facebook, go, anybody out there? And you build these communities. If you really want to build communities around myeloma, people can raise their hand and say, hi, I'm the myeloma group with neuropathy. I'm the myeloma group that did a syngeneic transplant. It's so easy to build this now. So you have to do what we do every day. We look at the technologies, we say, so why do we want to build off that to find a cure? And it comes down to everything we're trying to do in terms of a COMPASS study where we are collecting genomic data on our patients, deep, important genomic data, and then putting that data out there into the IT systems and the public domain. So we started working, as I said, over 2 years ago with PricewaterhouseCoopers when we saw all these technologies training. And we had the discipline to literally lock ourselves in rooms and try to figure out how we would get these plans done. This is what we're all launching today. It's not something that just came up. It's something that we were working on while we were putting all those new drugs out there in the pipeline. But what you'll see is we already started. Like, I watched that video and went, I cannot believe what we got done in a year. Yes, we started COMPASS. We didn't just start it. We have 190 patients screened. That's unbelievable. And why? Because we're working with the community centers, the ones that are seeing those newly diagnosed patients with that very untreated bone marrow. We're going to follow these patients sequentially. 50 sites open, all new sites for us. Second interim analysis complete. Why do you care about that? Everybody says to me, well, I can't get into the COMPASS trial, so why should I care? Okay, I was a patient when our team was presenting this interim data. You would not have believed the energy in our conference room. We're all looking at the data going, oh my God, look at 414s. Oh my God, look at the P53s. Oh, is BRAF going on? What are we seeing with these patients? The conversation, the energy, the questions, the hypotheses that we were all generating in a room just based off of the initial data was huge. Now imagine you get thousands of scientists doing that. That's what's going to change clinical outcomes. Lots of talk, lots of data, lots of ideas. So we also have the researcher portal, beta launch going out in November. And then you're also going to be seeing down the road, and others will talk about this, a community portal where we encompass study. And it's answering so many different questions that we may have. The second piece of that is, as you build off on the COMPASS study and get all these data systems together, is having an IT system that is in the public domain, that thousands of scientists can log into. And by the way, we can too, and start to look at that data so that everybody is looking at the data, not just 10 scientists at this center or 10 scientists at this pharma company, thousands of people. And then the third part of this is the most important. As you start to develop new clinical hypotheses, you develop new exciting clinical trials. What I love about our model is the fact that you can then put these trials into our clinical network. Because if you're doing a trial, for example, on one small subsegment of myeloma, maybe it's 10% of myeloma patients have that. If you want to do that trial, you have to be able to create a critical mass of those patients. You would never do that with just 2 or 3 centers. You wouldn't have enough patients. You have to have a clinical network like we have, so you accumulate enough patients to get these very advanced trials done. So in summary, so we don't lose any time, the bottom line, and I hope what you hear today, is we are in a window of time at the MMRF right now. Everything we are doing in terms of the COMPASS study is happening in the next 3 years. The bulk of patients going through COMPASS are being enrolled in the next 3 years. The robust genomic sequencing data that we are pulling together on these patients, much of that happening in the next 3 years. The pipeline of new drugs that you saw in the MMRC, all happening in the next 3 years. So the dilemma that we're in is any one time at the MMRF, we're not stopping anything. We need to keep giving grants out to keep all of our scientists working at in myeloma. We need to keep building tissue banking and genomics so we can understand what's going on in our disease. We need to keep building a huge pipeline of drugs so you have an abundance of drugs available to you. And we need to build out an entire personalized medicine program so that we can start to understand how we use those drugs and combinations of drugs well, so you get the right drug, the right combination of drugs at the right time. We need you over the next 3 years. We need you. Because right now, we don't have the funding to get all of that done. So we're going to be looking at each of you and to say, if you can help in a 3-year period, and many of you have already committed to a year, many of you already committed to 3 years, if there's anything you can do to help us, new names, new areas of focus, this is the most pivotal time for myeloma patients. And I promise you, with the plan, the partners, and what we've already started, we will never let you down. Thank you.